What I'm concerned about is this section to the west, where we're significantly bringing it over and taking away the buffer that exists currently. That's what I'm concerned about.
You might want to show your thing on your map so that people know where when you're pointing your finger.
Well, this is on this map. So
I know, but I meant on the overhead, because I don't know, not everyone has what you're seeing or what you're pointing to. I see it.
Cindy, am I a host?
No.
Can you make me, so I can screen share?
I just think it's easier. Sorry,
No worries.
it's helpful. You should be good.
I am. Thank you. Yeah, what am I doing now? Let's see. Let me get rid of the arrow. So I'm not so sure that this is going to be too helpful because of how it's presented, right? So when you look at the map, the business district currently extends, don't I have it? What, right? Give or take right there as well. And that one I'm saying, look, if you wanted to pull it back to the line, I don't have a problem pulling that back to the line. We can do map amendments. We're allowed to do that. So we could pull that back to the line. I'm not concerned about that one. What I'm concerned about is it's very tough for me to see. Is it
0013?
Yeah, I can't find, is it the 017? I think it's right about here. I think it's roughly here.
A little bit further up, isn't it?
Up here. That could be, that looks like a straight line. That's a straight line. So it's here to here to here. It's to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. Somewhere right there. It might be a little off because right there I'm at 6.33 without that additional, without changing on this side at all. But that's the area that I'm concerned about creating a buffer on. Is that section right there, and if that's rezoned.
And what I'm trying to say is, now if you pull the map up a little bit. Other way.
Down. Okay.
Sure. So is that all the way to the road?
Yes.
That you're showing? All right, so this isn't showing going all the way to the road. So ultimately,
Well, yes,
What-
it is right here. Oh, because that's where the extra lot came from, right? There's a little another notch. It notches out right there.
but again, okay, yeah.
That's it.
So yes, but what we're saying, what ultimately, what you're saying is we should not go beyond this line
Correct.
because we don't want to add,
Correct.
because we need to maintain boundary integrity.
Correct.
Currently, there's a boundary right here
Correct.
and there's no buffer. And you're saying we don't need that because,
I said, if you want to rezone that one, you can rezone that one because there's not the buffer concern that I have.
but you're also saying maintain the current lines.
I'm okay with maintaining the current lines, but I'm also saying if you if you're so gung ho about that one parcel there, that's a road parcel, then rezone it. That one's immaterial to me. Just like the one up here, if you want to pull that one back up at the north side, pull that one back. You can rezone those if you want. I don't care about those. I care about that big green section that's in the buffer.
And you're saying that the portion on that top portion is immaterial, but why is this portion immaterial? But then when it comes out to land area on this parcel,
Because
it
we're
becomes material.
we're pulling back business.
Okay.
We're not expanding the business, right?
All right.
So we're pulling it back.
Mhm.
Let me ask, I guess, are you leaning towards rezoning our entire map so that there are no parcels that have a line between two districts?
If we're going to do this, I think that makes sense.
So then I think we should talk about some of the ones that are, to me, far more significant than this one first, because you'll see in the R1, R2, you're gonna be stretching far one way or the other way. So if your policy is, I want to create the whole map so that I have all of these lines follow parcels, right? Let's look at some of those big ones where we're gonna have a massive impact by doing that. Same thing with Joe's. If we do that to Joe's parcel, you're increasing the business district by 14 acres.
No, you're not,
Yes, you are.
because Joe's parcel is well under 50% is currently business.
But why does that matter? So he shouldn't be able to use 12 of his 14 acres because
You're
Two
saying
is-
now that he can't.
I know. And so I'm saying, why are you giving these business owners the ability to fully use their parcels as business, but not Joe?
Because these were purchased specifically as business lots. With the understanding that, okay, I'm gonna put a business here.
Why do you say that? Some of them are still being used as residents.
But anyone that is currently operating a business bought it knowing, okay, this is gonna be a business.
Joe operated his as a business. He has a shop.
Mhm.
The other thing to remember is that people can merge lots at any time. So we're gonna follow this policy of making them all follow parcel lines. But then someone could combine two parcels and all of a sudden the parcel lines that were created are immaterial again.
Mhm. Just the same way they can subdivide.
Correct. And so any of these parcel owners, if there was a reason to, could subdivide it. Now, it's a landlocked parcel for the most part. So the only reason that someone would want to subdivide is if someone on the other side wants to buy it. But that's always an option that they have. Because in the B3 district, there's no minimum lot size.
What's everyone else think? Mostly this has been Marcus and I going back and forth on this. I'd like to get everyone else's opinion. I mean, Dave, we got yours of, hey, you know what, let's just put it back down. John, what do you? Put it down, keep chewing on it?
I think the question about consistency definitely. You know, extended it out, you're talking about, I'm guessing, Joe and Ursula over there, that's the one that you're.
That's the other one that has this. And then there's a one between the R1 and R2. The single parcel.
It's a big parcel,
It's
and
a
basically the
massive parcel.
northwest corner of it is
That the,
R2.
I think it's golf, it's
the
either the
golf
golf course or right, the one just next to the golf course, but it's in that vicinity up there.
like you say, where do you start and where do you stop?
I think we kind of started here because it's gonna be one that we'd spend a lot of time chewing on it. Cause I'm more of the mindset like, all right, if it's less than 50%, like dramatically less than 50%, then we could align it to their parcel. If someone like Joe, it is, all right, I've been using this as property, all right, legal non-conforming. And then things stay status quo, except that there's clear delineation in the book. Because I know we've kicked that around for B2 down on Bellis and 606.
Which is potentially another one that's also not.
Oh,
parcel
yeah,
by parcel.
Yeah.
Looks like follows the river.
which changes,
It does.
further complicating things. Which is kind of why, to me, it would make sense, all right, let's
Yes
go
and
with
no,
the parcel
because
line now.
the thing about a river is you've got the riparian setbacks on
Riparian
it,
setbacks.
and that prevents really, even if it merges, goes one way or the other, those riparian are pretty constant.
Yeah.
They don't move much.
There's a question. Presumably, when these properties were sold last time around, it was financing. Would title insurance be involved in this? Wouldn't they have some responsibility to point out that they're?
Honestly, I think it would mostly come down to any site plans that were submitted in the zoning office. The zoning inspector, when they're submitting the site plan, saying, if you can't go past this line.
But again, some like, for example, Foster's been sold 3 or 4 times since I've lived here.
Hmm?
Okay, it's basically, it's been expanded a little bit. But basically, I mean, that property is transferred from this owner to that owner to that owner. Wouldn't someone along the line discover that they're in 2 different districts?
I think because there's no change of use, I think it would just be one of those things.
Right,
Most people
that's my
would just
point.
kind of, loop, all right, it's just changing hands. It's clearly legal. They've been doing it for 800 years. Let's let them keep doing it. And so I don't think title insurance, I don't think a realtor, anyone would have looked at it. Now, if you're buying a residential lot in a business district, then perhaps. But I think if it's an existing business, and let's say, Petiti wanted to buy out, Greensmith. They would assume, okay, hey, they've been doing it, no issues. We're gonna be able to do it as well.
If they sought to expand it, they would absolutely.
If they sought to expand it.
If they sought to expand it in any way relative to what it is, they would
Mhm.
absolutely be having that conversation before they purchase the property to make sure where the setbacks are, where can I build what, and what is the process of zoning in order for me to get through that.
If they sought to
If
expand
they
it.
sought to expand it.
If they
So
wanted,
Petiti
if
just
they,
wanted
if they
buy
wanted
it
to be a
as is,
bolt-on business, there would be zero talk about any of that. And a lot of this is, I mean, frankly, a lot of what we do is hand-wringing about potential issues. This might not be an issue, but it could be an issue in the future. We don't know. I mean, like with with what we did with, getting the language for, short-term rentals, which I'll give you an update in a few minutes. We were pretty far ahead when it started becoming more of an issue in the township, because frankly, we got lucky. We decided to talk about it 2 years ago, and then, oh, now it's an issue. Ooh, we already have a place to jump off here. We don't have to do a text amendment defining these things. They're already defined. Now we can put a little bit of a enclosure around. If we would have spent all that time talking about
I think there's a big,
alpaca raising, it would have been for naught.
I think there's a big difference between then and this though, in the sense that what we're looking at with short-term rentals or any of those alpaca raising or anything is we're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future
Yeah.
and get ahead of those things,
Yeah.
right? For a map amendment, and particularly if all we're trying to do is allow them to do additional stuff there that they could do in portions of the property, it's not the same. We don't have to do that same prediction, because if someone wants to come forward and say, hi, I've got a plan, you know, and I've realized I can't do that plan, they can seek a map amendment and we can go through the process then, and then they can pursue their plan. So, you know, certainly there are some map amendments that we want to look at in terms of future, if we wanted to encourage an area to be more, you know, to grow the industrial base within a certain district of the township. Those kind of map amendments, we might want to be more forthcoming, you know, forthcoming on. We want to do due diligence before, because we're trying to encourage some sort of growth here. But what I'm hearing is that we're not trying to necessarily encourage growth here. We're trying to avoid a potential issue where these lot owners encroach upon this portion that unbeknownst to them, they couldn't encroach upon. And we need to resolve that. Well, there are multiple avenues for resolving that at the time it occurs, which is seek a variance or seek a map amendment.
Mhm.
And so I don't know why we have to do that same level of proactiveness with respect to this area as we do some of those other things.
Mhm.
Is the concern now because it's already being used, isn't that?
So I think what I'm looking at is, okay, we have some instances of things being used that aren't supposed to be.
We have that all over the township.
Yes, yeah. And what do we do when we find out about it? We send them to the BZA
Correct.
to try and get the variance. And to me, and this is just my opinion, it's certainly not a plurality of the board. I think it makes more sense to have boundaries, district boundaries that are showing, all right, this parcel is business, this parcel is residential. Not, you're a little of both. You can have business up to here, but then once you cross that line, you can't. So it actually, honestly, it makes me wonder, would there be any sort of ability for a person on one of these lots to put a home in the back and a business in the front in two separate structures? Would that be within the code? Would it be contradictory to the code?
None of these parcels are even big enough for it. Those parcels, right, the residential portions of all of those are under 2 acres. Are you trying to keep it on a single lot where you have both? I mean, I would suggest you talk to a prosecutor about that, because I'm pretty confident that they would say you couldn't do that. You'd have to choose one or the other.
How are these being taxed? I know we talked about the tax.
You always tax based upon value of the property. So when that was sold, it has an established value.
Yeah, but with businesses in a business district is taxed different than residential.
Mhm.
Still taxed based upon the value of the parcel. It's not based upon.
Correct, but a
But you get a
business
rebate
value.
based on how you're using it.
You get a homestead rebate if you're living in the parcel. Right? If you're
Not,
using,
you don't even have to be living in it. if it's not being used as business.
Well, my question was on, so Greensmith, we've mentioned that he's encroaching on it. How is his property being taxed? If part of it is residential and the other part is, in the business district? Right?
So the parcels themselves
Mhm.
are either zoned or are either being,
Well, they label them, just go to the lot and
Yeah,
go
no,
to
no,
what
no,
it
and-
says,
yeah,
what
exactly.
it's, what it
And-
is.
the lot that is, one of the lots that's bifurcated is
Mhm.
being taxed as a business. One of the lots that is also, one of the other lots that is not bifurcated is not being taxed as a business.
Is it because so John owns a couple rental homes there. Is it one of the ones that he's using as a rental home, not as a business?
I believe it's the gift shop.
Is being taxed as a residence?
I started to go through them, but I couldn't get them all, so.
Yeah,
I don't-
and that's if memory serves correct. I could be incorrect on that one.
Because the one on the other side, he is using it though. And it's a rental.
Who do we consider responsible for this? The present owner, previous owner, assuming they haven't built a structure on it, but for a moment. Previous owner, I mean,
Responsible for what?
for
Comply.
compliance with rules and
With the
regulations. It's part of picking winners and losers, but you know, not, I mean, you can't go back and blame, but I'm just trying to get some ideas. Someone let this happen somehow, somewhere, sometime.
I honestly, I don't think you would, at any point would we truly blame the owner.
Well, but that's what we're gonna do. We
I
should
think
change
who we'd have to blame would be ourselves, our office. Not necessarily the commission, but certainly the inspector, the zoning office. If they submit a site plan,
If they submit it, your assumption is that they submit a site plan.
okay, and if they
did not,
didn't
it's
submit,
absolutely on
and,
the
and
owner.
if they didn't submit a site plan and there were no resolution enforcement steps taken, then it absolutely falls back on our office. If let's say any one of these businesses stood up when we clearly state you need to submit a site plan and they don't submit it and we don't follow up, that is 100% on the zoning office. If you have regulations and someone just goes up and opens a business, just opens a business, it is the zoning inspector's job to go out and say, hey, you aren't following the right procedures. What you need to do is this.
If I changed my electrical in my house and the county didn't follow up, maybe they didn't even know that that happened.
Mhm.
It's the county's fault because they didn't enforce their regulations. It's me, the
There's
homeowner's
a
fault.
big
because
difference between what's going on inside the building and, okay, hey, I'm putting out signs for my building, for my business.
Okay, let's,
When someone starts a business, it's not like they're trying to keep it hidden.
I don't know why for a business, you're saying it's on the or on the township. But let's say I build a shed on my property, a barn on my property, right? All those are big structures. But if the county doesn't come out, if I don't notify the county that I'm building this,
Is it agricultural?
let's assume it's not, right? If the county doesn't know that I'm doing this, it's not the county's. 10 years down the road, I sell the property and then, oh, it turns out that has enormous violations on it. It doesn't turn out that it's the county's fault because the county failed to identify that my parcel had a shed that was built in the back or a barn that was built in the back. Similarly, a barn can be built in Hinckley and it can get an agricultural exemption, right? So it might not comply at all with zoning. But the second that you stop using that as agricultural, it's actually a non-conforming building that wasn't legally constructed.
Mhm.
Right? And yet there are all kinds of those throughout the township.
So you don't think the zoning office has any obligation when they see a new business.
They have an obligation to the whole community.
When they- I
see a
think
new business,
When
to
they see,
identify.
when they see a new business, none of these businesses like popped up and we're like, they've been here 20 years. Oh, I'm just seeing it for the first time. And so when we're talking right here on Ridge Road, if someone's putting in a landscaping business, like that's incumbent upon the zoning inspector to find out what is going on here.
Absolutely, but if they don't, it's not the township's fault. It's not the township's responsibility. Ultimate responsibility lies with the person who violated the zoning code. Knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree that ignorance of the law does not mean you don't have to adhere to it. But I think there is some shared blame there. If you know the code, that's your job. And you walk past a violation every day. Is there not some amount of responsibility on that? On that individual?
Could they sue?
Who?
Could future homeowners, a future property owner sue because building or something happened on that parcel that the government failed to act on, and now they're acting on it, and I'm trying to give you the hypothetical, I'm not sure it's going to work.
Ultimately, this doesn't come down to a hypothetical situation. It's, I mean, is there a certain amount of responsibility that we expect of the zoning inspector if they're walking past something that they're seeing on a daily basis? And it's a violation. Do we say, hey, they're doing a great job? Or, hey, you know, we really need to do something about this?
Well, let me go back, Greensmith, for example, when they purchased that from Grace Brothers, I believe the buildings and everything were the same. Now, Greensmith has obviously added a landscaping business. I don't know that he's added another building or not. I've not been back there and have no reason to. But he has expanded upon that, the services that were not available to the previous owner. I don't know that.
And then the question is like, all right, is that really an
Yeah,
expansion?
that's my
If you're
question.
just-
That's so significant to it. I would, well, of course, I don't know what the revenues are and all that sort of thing, but.
And if ultimately it's just storage anyways.
True, which is, he had storage before. Perhaps not as elaborate as so much.
And I feel bad that we keep bringing up the same couple of businesses.
Well, it's
But
because we.
because I don't want it to seem like we're trying to pick on them. We're using them as examples for
Right.
both sides of this. Personally, I don't look at it like we are doing this to help or hurt any of these businesses. I understand, I think your rationale of, all right, well, if we move these lines out, then these businesses can get closer to residences. But these businesses might already be close to those residences.
But they're not. The only thing that's in that area currently is bulk storage of landscape materials.
And where?
Bulk storage of landscape materials.
So there's really only one.
There's only one.
I'm all for consistency. So, I mean, we can sit here and talk about this, but unless we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna follow the lines all throughout the township, then I'm
And
saying,
that's-
let's table this, because, I mean, unless we do it consistently throughout the township, it doesn't make sense to spend it all the time just on this area. That's my one take. My second
agree.
is, I really do not want to expand the business area in downtown Hinckley right now, especially with what is proposed across the street.
Okay.
I'm kind of nervous about that. It,
All right, I'm hearing at least 3 saying table it, and I'm fine moving on to the next topic. If that's. if
well,
I
I'm
get a-
saying if we're gonna be consistent, let's do it all.
Oh, I completely
So-
agree with that.
If that's what we want to do, fine. I just want to make sure it's consistent throughout the township.
And I believe up in the northwest corner and along Boston Road, we did that.
At the homeowner, we did it at Z's request, the people who are in Z requested the map amendment.
Okay. But we did it
We did it for them.
quite a while ago. Okay, I'm fine with tabling it if everyone else is. And,
I think, once we get through the other topics, you can bring it back up and just see if
Oh,
there's any
totally,
more
and
appetite or not
yeah.
appetite at that point. But I feel like, that's why I said, we should look at some of the other ones before we did anything, because I think the R1, R2 one is a far larger challenge, and I think Joe's is a far larger challenge than this for the purpose of consistency. And so I don't know how even if we could get through this one, I don't know how we get through those two. That R1, R2 is almost half-half. And it's a significant change in value of that parcel.
well, it doesn't seem like we got the appetite for it right now as a commission. So I have no problem moving on from it. And